Welcome to LexMedia's ongoing session on coronavirus. And today we have a great guest. We have Deborah Brown, who is the town moderator for town meeting here in Lexington. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you, Colleen. I'm delighted to be talking to you today. I wish it were in person, but this will have to do.
Definitely for now. At some point we will have to get together in person. So I thought this is, I think, a great time for this interview to come as we're looking, as you're looking into having a remote town meeting coming up, and we're going to get into a lot of details. But I thought maybe we could start with you just sharing a little bit about yourself and how long you've lived in Lexington and how you became the town moderator.
Sure, absolutely. So my husband David and I moved to Lexington in 1995, just in time for our oldest child, Jake, to start kindergarten at Estabrook. So we live on the end of Robinson Road, dead end street. We could walk to school with him, and we've just been in love with Lexington ever since. So we raised two children here, Jake and Sally. They went through the Lexington Public Schools, Estabrook, Diamond, the high school, and they are now 27 and 29 years old, so they're fully launched. Jake lives in Somerville. He's working on his PhD in government at Harvard, and Sally's an account executive at a public relations firm, and she's living in Woburn, so they're close by. And David works at Mass General, and in my day job, I work at the State House as legislative and budget director for Senator Cindy Friedman, whose district includes 6 of the 9 precincts in Lexington.
Oh, great. So why don't you talk a little bit, I know you've been the town moderator for how many years?
This is my 12th year as moderator. Wow. I know. And prior to that, I was an elected town meeting member from Precinct 7 for 9 years. Okay. So I'm coming up on 20 years in town meeting. I also served, during that time on town meeting, I served on the Appropriation Committee, one of the town's 2 finance committees. Mm-hmm. Served on that for 9 years, including a stint as chair.
Okay.
So now I'm the moderator, and the moderator is a townwide elected position. Unlike other townwide seats like the select board or school committee, mine is not a 3-year term, it's a 1-year term. So I'm on the ballot every year. I have to rerun every year. And the reason for that is that one of my responsibilities, in addition to moderating the town meeting, is to appoint all of the members of the town's 2 finance committees, so the Appropriation Committee and the Capital Expenditures Committee. So that's a pretty big responsibility, and mm-hmm. the voters should have a chance to weigh in on whether they approve of my choices, and they should be able to do that more often than every 3 years. So that's
they must approve after 12 years.
Yeah.
So I thought you touched a little bit about town meeting, but for people that aren't really familiar, maybe people that have just moved to Lexington, and when I first moved here, it was kind of a whole new world about town meeting. So I thought maybe you could just give a little bit of background about what representative town meeting is, how many representatives there are, and just a little bit of background.
Sure. So I'll step back to give some statewide background. So we have 351 municipalities in Massachusetts, and 59 of those have a city form of government, and 292 of those communities have a town form of government. And then among those 292, they all have town meetings, but the vast majority of those, 259, are open town meetings. And 33 have representative town meetings, which is what Lexington has. Mm-hmm. So an open town meeting is when any registered voter in the town can show up at town meeting and vote. And a representative town meeting is one where the members are elected by the residents in their precincts. So we have 9 precincts in Lexington, and we have 189 elected town meeting members across all those 9 precincts, and they are elected for staggered 3-year terms.
Okay. I think that's really helpful for people to understand. And, it definitely, so as we're in what we're in right now in this coronavirus pandemic, and then as we start talking about representative town meeting, and, one of the special things is, being on the floor and the yes and no, and, being able to ask questions. So, I'm sure it's been a huge challenge as we're looking forward to having the first meeting. And so I thought now we could maybe kind of move into where you are in the planning stages for this this remote town meeting that's going to be taking place on June 1st.
Sure. So Lexington is actually one of the earliest communities to have its annual town meeting in the spring. So we were only one of a couple of communities that had actually called its town meeting and issued a warrant before the pandemic emergency. Okay. So back in March, everybody should have received a warrant in the household for the annual town meeting. We were scheduled to start on March 23rd. But obviously, as we got into March and as that date approached, we found ourselves in a completely different set of circumstances. We had a statewide public health emergency. We were all being encouraged to not meet in large groups. So pretty early on, we started talking and thinking about whether there was another way to hold our town meeting that would be consistent with public safety and public health recommendations, but also would protect the interest of the town, of the participants in the town meeting, and would sort of satisfy all of the legal requirements of a town meeting. So we started investigating different video conferencing platforms, thinking about some of the logistics that we would need to work out. How would town meeting right now town meeting members at a face-to-face meeting will queue up at different microphones. Yes, no, question microphone. We have a citizen microphone in the balcony. So how would we recreate that in a virtual fashion? How would we do voting? So Lexington has been doing electronic voting for a number of years. We all have handheld voting units that allow us to vote on that unit and then get a recorded vote in real time so that all of the folks who have elected their representatives can see how they voted and engage with them. Why did you vote the way you did? So we wanted to have something that had the look and the feel as much as possible.
Okay. And I when you're saying, I know that there's been many people that have been involved in all this work behind the scenes to make this happen. Why don't maybe you could touch upon the remote planning team and who's on that team and, what the steps that everyone's been taking to move towards this goal?
Absolutely. And first, I should say that the full select board have been engaged in this conversation. So the very first thing that I had to do was actually simply postpone the meeting, because once the select board calls the meeting is under the control of the moderator. And so any postponement, there was already existing Massachusetts general law that would allow me under a public safety emergency to postpone the start of the meeting. So I did that in consultation with the select board, with public safety officials, with the Board of Health. And so I've done that now a number of times, and I will need to do it one more time to postpone to June 1st, which will be the date of our remote town meeting. So one of the things that I did early on was appoint a small working group to work on the technological aspect of this. So that consists of Joe Pato, of Doug Lucente, and of Ben Morose, who is the chair of the Town Meeting Members Association. And we've also had, input have been provided by some other folks who are pretty technologically savvy. So they and I have been working with some staff involvement. The town manager's been engaged, Kelly Axtell's been engaged in this, and of course our town council has been someone that we've consulted with quite a bit around the legal aspects. Mm-hmm. So this group has been testing the Zoom platform, which we decided early on would be the platform we would use. It's the one that members are most familiar with. Mm-hmm. And although there are some significant security issues that have made the press, basically Zoom bombing, other outsiders gaining control of the meeting, those things can be avoided by using the Zoom webinar feature, by requiring everyone who's participating to have a unique password, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So those are the sorts of things that we needed to sort out. Voting was going to be a big logistical issue that we needed to work out. How are we going to do this vote on a Zoom meeting? Were we going to do a voice vote? Would I have to do a roll call? And what we discovered along the way is that our vendor who supplies our electronic voting system, Options Technology, had developed an online version of that voting software. So instead of using the handheld device that each town meeting member gets when they check into town meeting, this would allow someone to vote using their computer, their smartphone, their tablet.
Okay.
So we started testing that, and the town purchased that module. And that is going to have a great advantage for our members because it will feel very much and look very much like what they're used to. So they will see on the screen the sorts of screens that they would see at the face-to-face town meeting, where scroll through each precinct, seeing how everybody voted. So that was really a big bonus, and that helped us to sort of solve this logistical problem of how we were going to do the vote. And then we also needed some ability for folks to indicate that they wanted to speak at the virtual yes microphone, no, or question microphone. And so this is where we owe a huge debt of gratitude to Joe Pato, who basically developed a queuing function, an online queuing function that is going to allow me to see a list of who wants to speak for a motion, who wants to speak against, who wants to pose a question or a point of order or personal privilege. And it will allow me to recognize those people, have them unmuted so they can then speak. There will be a timer like they're used to, time them for their 3 minutes or their 2 minutes at the question microphone. So Joe has created that from scratch. And he's also developed an online portal, one web page that town meeting members will go to, and they'll be able to link to Zoom from that, link to the queuing function, and link to the voting function. So we're in the final stages of testing that, and then we're going to roll out instructional meetings, precinct by precinct, so that with small groups, we can help folks get acclimated, find out what problems they're having using Zoom, et cetera. And then, so that will take place over the next 2 weeks, those precinct by precinct meetings. And then on May 27th, we will hold an unofficial, all participant mini mock town meeting, just to do one test with everybody on board. And then we'll hold the actual meeting starting on June 1st. Okay, great. Well, that's very helpful for people that, are on town meeting. And then also, I think you touched upon the precinct level testing that's going to take place before. Now, what about for the general public and their involvement and being able to watch this? And, you talked about you used to be able to sit up in the stands and if you had a question. So how will that be incorporated into this process? Terrific question. So this is where LexMedia is actually going to come in, because LexMedia is going to be set up with a direct feed to the Zoom meeting. So they will be able to videotape everything that town meeting members see, and that will be available for live streaming. It will be available on demand, and it can be broadcast on cable as well. So anyone in town will be able to watch it one of those ways. They won't have to load Zoom. They won't have to know how to use that. They'll be able to watch the feed in real time and also watch the tape later. Okay. If they want to speak, however, we had to do a workaround because for security purposes, we can't sort of allow the whole general public to log into Zoom. So what we're going to be rolling out in the next couple of weeks is a place on the town website. There's already a town meeting page on the town website where you can see the whole warrant, all the motions, all the presentations, and we will have a place where citizens can basically submit a request to speak for or against an article. They'll be able to submit a written statement, and we'll give them guidelines for how many words, because we have a 3-minute time limit. So we'll translate that into how many words their statement can be. And so those will be read by a staff person at the appropriate time, giving the name of the person and the precinct where that person lives. And we will also have an ability for residents watching, if in the moment of the meeting they decide they want to speak for or against, there will be probably both a chat function and an email address where they can immediately mail a statement. We'll have staff monitoring that, and again, at the appropriate time, I can recognize and have those read. Okay, that's great.
So why don't we talk a little bit about the actual warrant, and what are you kind of foreseeing as, you know, some of the main issues that will be coming up on the floor with this remote town meeting?
Sure. So one of the challenges that I posed early on to the select board and to all the other boards and committees and individuals who had submitted articles for the warrant was to think about what were the articles that were the most time sensitive and really needed to be done this spring, and what could we put off to a later special town meeting. Mm-hmm. And everyone was incredibly understanding and cooperative with that, and right away some decisions were made about which articles could be easily put off. So for instance, the planning board had a number of zoning articles on the warrant, and they agreed that the only one that was really time sensitive was the one for 1050 Waltham Street, where there's a developer who wants to do a redevelopment that would require a rezoning. And so that one we will do at this town meeting, but the rest of them are going to be referred back to the planning board with the idea that we'll have them on the warrant for a future special town meeting. Likewise, we had a number of citizens who had submitted articles to the warrant through the petition process. And I had conversations with each one of them to present to them the option of putting their article off to a future special town meeting. And the select board had agreed that for anyone who was willing to do that, they would automatically put that article on a future warrant without requiring them to go through the petition process again, which is important because you need a lot more signatures for a special town meeting article than you do for an annual town meeting. So we wanted to make that seamless. We didn't want anyone to be burdened by agreeing to put it off. So we're putting off most of the citizen articles. So it's really pared down to what's most time critical. It's heavy on budget articles, all of the operating and capital items that keep our schools running, that keep all of our town services running, so that, you know, we can continue to serve the residents in the town as seamlessly as possible.
Okay. And I know we had talked about before we came on the interview about the emergency legislation that is happening around this, and, you know, kind of what are the legal issues that are taking place for this to happen?
That's a good question. So the state law around town meeting was written decades ago and never contemplated something like a Zoom meeting, and certainly didn't contemplate this sort of emergency. Yeah. And so, you know, a legal reading of some of that language can lead one to conclude that in order for a town meeting to be legal, it has to take place in a physical location, because there's language that refers to the time and the place where the meeting's going to happen. And so, out of an abundance of caution and to make sure that we meet all the legal requirements, there was some concern that we needed some emergency legislation to allow, in an emergency like this, for a remote town meeting. So Representative Michelle Socolo, who represents Lexington, filed a bill in the House that would allow representative town meetings like ours to, with the consultation of the moderator in consultation with the select board, could arrange for a remote town meeting. And the legislation specifies some of the requirements of that, right? Okay. So that's been filed in the House. Meanwhile, in the Senate, a similar bill has actually just this week, on May 4th, was passed in the state Senate. And so that bill has been sent to the House. So one of those two bills we're hoping is on a fast track. Mm-hmm. And we need a bill that is identical in the House and the Senate, that both have passed, and then we'll send to the governor for a signature. So I'm very, very grateful to Representative Socolo and the champions in the Senate who are trying to move this forward. And I'm hoping that this legislation will be passed soon. But we should always have a plan B. And we have a plan B, which is many of the people watching this may have noticed that the select board have called a special town meeting for June 1st. So a special town meeting to take place on the same date as the new date for the annual town meeting. One article on that warrant, and it's an article to ask the select board to petition the legislature for special legislation to certify the votes taken remotely at this annual town meeting. So it would be a piece of legislation just for Lexington. It would be a local rule petition. And so that's sort of our plan B. But our preference is to have this emergency bill that applies to all representative town meetings to pass.
Okay.
But one way or another, we think we can make it a legal meeting.
I saw that the State House, they're learning too. They're just they've just started with their remote voting, and so this is something new for everyone.
That's right. That's right. This is uncharted territory.
So do you know, Deborah, of any other towns that are going through this as well and are trying to do a remote representative town meeting?
Sure. So I know that Brookline is actively involved in planning for a remote town meeting. Theirs will be held a couple of weeks after ours, so in the second half of June. I'm in close contact with Sandy Gadsby, who's the moderator in Brookline. He's a friend and colleague. And I know that Jim Malloy, our town manager, is in close contact with Brookline's town administrator. So we're all sort of comparing notes. Okay. I suspect there are other communities that are looking at this, but I think that Lexington and Brookline are the two that are furthest along with their plans.
Okay. And in looking at the timing of doing this, some people might say, well, why not just wait and put it off until, we can actually do the representative town meeting? What would you say is the reasoning to, kind of forging ahead and really, going ahead with the remote town meeting?
That's a completely fair question. So one of the emergency pieces of legislation that have been passed during this pandemic is one that would allow towns to go past the end of the fiscal year. So June 30th is the end of our fiscal year. July 1st starts a new year. To go past June 30th without voting a new budget. So that's the most important thing that we do at our annual town meeting. We are the legislature. We are the appropriating authority. And so in the absence of that vote, there is emergency legislation that allows a town to continue to function, and they can spend each month 1/12 of their prior year's budget. So there is sort of a safety net, but that doesn't allow any new spending or reconfiguring, what's spent where. It means that we would have to put a halt to some of the planning that we're doing for capital projects, because if you can't appropriate new money for design development, then you can't move forward, and then the project will become more expensive because it will be on a different timeline, et cetera. So this was truly the call of, and appropriately so, of the select board with input from the town manager. And it was their decision that if we could do a remote town meeting, that was preferable to moving forward with a 1/12 budget each month.
Okay, great. I think that's really helpful for people. So, and I nothing to do with town meeting, but I was walking today, and I was walking by the new visitor center, and it looks beautiful. And it's kind of nice in what's happening today in today's world to see something that is new and brings hope, and it's going to bring, I think, a lot of joy to both Lexington residents and people that come from all over the world to visit.
Right. No, I agree. It's very exciting to see that progress.
So, Deborah, again, we talked about the precinct level testing that's going to start this week and next week. For people to find out when their testing is taking place and about the May 27th, kind of all participant mini training, where can they go for more information about that?
Sure, and I'm really glad you asked that question. So I've been communicating with town meeting members through our town meeting members email list. And so there's information there, but the town is now mailing this, I believe, the end of this week. So these should be arriving in the mailboxes when people are first starting to watch this. So every town meeting member is going to receive a letter with their specific login information and their individual password and some instructions for what comes next.
Okay.
And so please watch for that in your mailboxes. And we are also posting my letter to town meeting members that was on the town meeting members email list. That's being posted on the town website on the page devoted to town meeting. So that will have the list of all the precinct tests that are taking place. So those are starting May 12th and they're continuing through May 21st. So 2 weeks of precinct by precinct testing.
Okay, and then again, the May 27th.
I'll give a shout out to 2 important dates. So May 27th at 7:30 p.m. will be our sort of all participant mini training session. And then the actual remote town meeting will begin 7:30 p.m. on Monday, June 1st. And I'm asking town meeting members to hold Monday, June 1st, Wednesday, June 3rd, and Thursday, June 4th for that meeting. And I'm predicting that we'll need at least 2 nights, maybe 3, and I hope not more than that.
Okay. And again, for the general public that would like to watch this, LexMedia has an integral part of streaming this live, and people can watch that on the government channel.
Absolutely, and the general public should also continue to check in on the town meeting page on the town website. We will soon have some information about how residents can submit statements for particular articles, and we'll have the dates up and probably links to LexMedia, so the information will be in a lot of different places and people will be well prepared for June 1st.
Okay, great. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I've learned a lot, and I hope everyone that watches this interview has learned a lot. And I would like to personally thank you, because I know that a lot of time and hours have gone into the planning of this, as well as the entire remote planning team. And we're very grateful for all of your hours and years of service to the town of Lexington.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much for doing this. This is a great way for us to get the word out, and I'm really grateful for LexMedia, because you're going to make it possible for us to make this meeting public and accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I said in the other interview, LexMedia has really done I'm a volunteer, but obviously LexMedia, the entire team, Florence, Terry, Rick, Julie, Ryan, Devin, everyone has put a lot of time into really helping to educate and inform the public, which is what they are best at doing. And so this will be a continued series that LexMedia is hosting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4 o'clock. They present different interviews, and I think every Monday is an interview with the town manager, Jim Malloy, and then and then we fill in.
Right.
So I think people, it's great. I think everyone's learning a lot, and it's really just continuing to make Lexington a great community. So thank you so much, Deborah.
Thank you, Colleen.
Have a great day.
LexMedia team. Thank you.
And good luck on June 1st.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.